Okay, as a continuity for the practicing for the two-dimensional array, let's assume that we have a programming practice which is called a class scores, and we need to create this class scores to read from a file, and the first line within this file will contain the number of the students that we have within the classroom. Now, every line is corresponding to the quizzes that this student do. So per student, we have 5 quizzes. So whenever since I start the first line as the number of the student is 4, so I'm expecting to see 4 students. And then every student will have to do 5 grades. So the first line number 2 here is referring to the student number 1. So that means student number 1 have a 3, 2, 5, 5, 4 add the scores for his quizzes. And the same scenario for all the 4 students. Now the program, we're gonna assume that whenever we are run this program, we are gonna match to have the following, which is the first thing we are gonna print the sequence number per student, and then the quiz 1 score, quiz 2 score, 3, 4, and 5 are as the follow. So here I can have a perfect matrix. In this matrix, I can see per quiz what's going to be the score of the students, and also per student what exactly their scores within all the quizzes. Then the program will show me the average score for the student number 1. So this is going to show me the score for student number 1 to show me that student number 1 get 3 as an average for all the quizzes. Student number 2 get 1 as an average for all the quizzes, and so on. Then it will show me per quiz what's going to be the average for all students. So for example, quiz number 1, the average of all the students is a 3. For quiz number 2, the average of all the students is 2, and so on. In the last line, I'm going to display what exactly going to be the average of all the quizzes for all the students. Going by this link, you can reach exactly to the corresponding program. Now, let's see the program together. Now, in the program, first of all, I import both packages, util, since I'm going to access the scanner, and IO, since I'm going to access the input file. And this is the corresponding input file that we are aiming to. You can see that the first line, including the number of the students, while starting from the second one, I have the score per student for every quiz. Now, in the main program, I initiate the two-dimensional array. I call it table. And then I make it equal, instead of making equal to a new array or to a new integer array, I make it equal to a fill table. And I pass to it this string, which is input.txt. This is one way to practice that I can fill the array by getting help from another method that we created right in here. In this method, I am passing the file name, and this file name returning back to me a new array of two-dimensional array, and it's of type int. All right, then you can see that we print this array. So I'm passing the same array to be printed. Then we get the average per student. Then we get the average per quiz. Then the total to average. We place this one within a try and catch because fill table will access a scanner for file readers. So maybe this one will throw an exception. So since this one may throw an exception, so I need to catch it in case the exception is thrown. Now, within the fill table, you can see that I am passing the name of the file, and this name of the file is received right in here. And you can see this one's supposed to return for me the two-dimensional array of type integer. Now the first line, I'm accessing the scanner to read it from the file. Then I go and read the first line, which is going to be the student count. So by this particular code, I'm accessing the first particular line, which is 4. So now I know that it's a 4 students. Now, since I already know that it's every student will have 5 quizzes, so now I'm creating a table array, okay? Although that it's have the same name of this one, but they are totally independent. This one is actually an array which is defined within main, while this one is the one which is defined within fill table. Now I make it equal to the new integer student count, which is going to be in this scenario 4 and 5. So that's mean I have 4 student, I will have a 4 student, every student will have 5 quizzes. So the number of rows will be 4, while the number of columns will be 5. All right. By this line, the table or my matrix is ready. Now I'm have to fill it. Now going row by row by the table.length, and then go in the inner loop column by column, and you can see now it's table 0.length. So I go, since it's a perfect matrix, so all the columns are equal for all the rows. So that means all of them will be having the same. Of course, I can replace this one by student count, and I can replace this one by 5 if it's fixed. But this will give us more dynamic sensing within our program. Now we go to read integer by integer. So the first one is going to be saved in the first row in the first column. Then the second one will be placed in row number 0 in column number 1. Then this one in row number 0 in column number 0, and so on. When I reach to the last one, this one will be saved in row number 0 in the column number 4. Whenever I finish, now the job of the inner loop is finished. Now R will become 1, so that means I jump to the second row, and the second row will read till I reach to the end. Whenever this loop is finished, this table is filled, all right, with the corresponding these values. Now the table is ready to be sent back. This is why we send back and return it back to the main. And since it's returning back, I make this table is equal to this table. So that means both of them as a reference values. And since we have a shallow equality between them, so now the two tables are equal. All right. Now, whenever we go to the printing, you can see that for the printing, I'm sending the table, which is a 2-dimensional array. So this is why I have to receive it right in here. While the type of this particular method is actually void, because I'm not planning to return anything. The first line is corresponding to the header of this program. It's starting from the sequence number followed by the tab, then the question one, quiz one with a tab, and so on. So this will give us an indication of this particular line. All right. Now, then I say that the sequence number is equal to 1. Now here, since I need in the printing just to access the values without changing them, now I say that, okay, for the table, start to read row by row. All right, and since the table values are integer, so I'm saving them inside a row integer. Then I'm going to print for SQ++. So this is going to go from S1, S2, S3, and so on. And SQ++ for the first time is going to be 1, while for the second iteration is going to be 2, and so on. Now I go for row by row, and I save them within the value. Of course, you can replace this one by the one which is corresponding to access them by index, right? But here I would like to show you that we can do such a thing since we are trying to access the values, okay? Now, every element that I have, every row, it's gonna be every element within this row, which is now, it's a 1-dimensional array, it's gonna be saved within the value. So that's mean it's like I read the whole thing, I save it inside a single dimensional array, then I save each one of them inside the value. Now I will print the value followed by a tab. Whenever this one is finished, the whole values is going to be printed for this row. Then second row will be read from the table and it's repeated again. All right. Now, whenever we are talking about printing the student average, that means I'm printing per row. So I'm printing the average for this student, then for this student, then for this. So I need to define that the number of the sum within this particular row. Then I need to divide it by the number of the quizzes, which is 5. So this is why you can see that once I read from the student, I go and make the sum is equal to 0. And then I start to do the sum for this particular student. Whenever I finish for one student, I'm printing the student number followed by the average of this number. And you can see now it says sum over the table 0, not actually table. Why? Because I need to be divided by 5, which is going to be the number of columns. In comparison, when I do the average for the quizzes, it's exactly the opposite, because I need to get per column what is exactly. So I'm the measure, the outer loop is gonna jump from column to column, while the inner loop is gonna go from row to row. And it's repeated again, and it's gonna show me quiz by quiz how it's gonna be looks like. In the last one, which is print average, you can see that the sum now, it's not gonna be inside the outer loop, outer loop, it's actually outside the outer loop. This is why, because I need to define the sum whenever I finish. So this is why in here, the sum is going to calculate all the elements within the array. Then I divide them by the multiplication of the number of columns multiplied by the number of rows. In this scenario, it's going to be 5 by 4, which is going to be divided by 20. And if I run this program, you can see that for this particular code, I have exactly the sequence number for every student, the quizzes, I have the average per student, I have the average per quiz, and I have the average for the whole program. Thank you very much for listening.